Hello YouTube, today we're going to keep discussing the Book of Five Rings. It is a rainy day outside, it's a great time to discuss literature. So we're going to dive deep into the work of Miyamoto Musashi again. If you haven't seen part one, I highly encourage you to watch it because you won't understand the context if you just jump into this one. So we're going to continue reading and understanding the words of Musashi in the context of training and bettering yourself physically and mentally. Musashi says in the book several times, and it is something that is recurrent, that you must practice constantly. It is repeated with different phrasings, but it's a notion that is very important to the way of the warrior and to his mentality when it comes to developing your strength and your mindset as a man. What does it mean? It means that if you want to be good at something, you need to do it constantly. You need to do it every day. There's a very well-known saying that goes that excellence is a habit. You become excellent because you repeat the action again, and again. And yes, natural talent is very important in this world, but natural talent will not make you win the race. And in truth, it really doesn't matter if you're talented or not, because at the end of the day, you're still going to have to work hard. Even if you have zero talent, just saying that it's not worth it and giving up completely on it is never going to result in any happiness or fulfillment in life. It's important to know your own limits, but most of the time, self-imposed limitations just make people miserable. Musashi says, the strategist makes small things into big things, like building a great Buddha from a 1-foot model. I cannot write in details how this is done. The principles of strategy is having one thing to know 10,000 things. Again, it's a notion that is repeated throughout the book, and that's very important. It's aggrandizing and growing your knowledge, not through the consumption of literature, but through your own experience. Once you know one thing, you know 10,000 things. What does that mean? It means that you should have the ability to apply your mind and to conclude certain evidence from experiences that you already have or from truth that you've already experienced. An example that is easy to understand. You train your squat and you realize that your knee gets itchy. You go and you buy knee sleeves or a wrap or anything that keeps the knee warm, the pain goes away and your performance increases. That's one thing. You experience that and now you have that knowledge. Because you have that knowledge, you also know many more things. You know that if you have elbow pain, the same logic can be applied. But that's just correlation, that's just applying the same logic to a different joint. You can go further from that. Now you have knowledge on recovery. You know that certain techniques are going to help you to recover. So now you can preemptively apply those techniques on other areas of your body that might not be in pain right now, but it's going to prevent the pain from occurring. That's the second stratus. And then the third stratus, you can go even beyond that and try and understand if there could be other ways to reduce the pain beyond just knee wraps, for example. And if you can find that for squats, you can find that for your knees, for your elbows, for your back, etc. That's what Musashi means when he says to learn one thing is to know 10,000 things. If the light wants to come in. One thing I know is that that light is a problem. So, he also says in this same paragraph that the strategist makes small things into big things. And it's the exact same spirit, basically is. You start from here, and from that amount of knowledge, you make much more. And that's going to save you a lot of time, in truth. He also says that he cannot write in detail how it's done. This is Musashi's favorite sentence. He says that all the time. I think that it's meta in a way. It's not that he cannot write it, it's that he wants you to discover it for yourself. And the fact that the first time the sentences appear in the Book of Five Rings appears in this paragraph, in the middle of it, in my opinion, is not a mistake. It appears in the middle of the paragraph where Musashi tells you that if you know one thing, you know 10,000 things. So what is he telling you? He's basically telling you with this that from his one sentence, you should be able to understand 10,000 sentences. So it's a key of comprehension given to you by the author very early on in the book. So you have to keep that in mind. He continues, in strategy, it is necessary to treat training as part of normal life, with your spirit unchanging. There's going to be a video addressing that same topic coming live this week, talking about anger. Because a lot of people like to lift angry, they like to lift hyped up. I personally disapprove of that method for many reasons that I will go into detail in the other video. But Musashi sort of agrees. He goes into battle, which is the art of killing other men, with the same spirit than in everyday life. There are nuances to this. You shouldn't just go through the motion. You shouldn't just lift passively. But there is such a thing as too much aggressivity. Not just for people around you. If you're in commercial gym, we don't care about other people in that sense. But for your own performance and your own sake. If you make training that different space, it can have very beneficial elements. It can make it special. It can help you deload stress at the end of the day. But if you attach too much importance to the results of the daily training you do, because you should be training daily or by at least 3 or 4 times a week, it is going to make such a difference between your normal life and the time you work out that the transition is not going to be flawless and you're going to suffer from it. It's also going to make you believe that what you're doing is exceptional. Now, it's highly debated, and on this channel we'll talk about it a lot. Some people like to present weight training and bodybuilding, powerlifting as that sort of, as a replacement for war. They sort of want you to believe that we're warriors, we're going to war with the iron. I don't dislike that mentality because it's a good fire to motivate people, but it is taking that hobby a little bit too seriously, in a sense where we're not risking our lives. It's not like going on the battlefield. It's really not. It's its own form of fighting, for sure, and I'll make videos about it because it's very important for men, and I think lifting weights for men is it's greatly beneficial. But you cannot take yourself too seriously, and you cannot let yourself enter a mindset that is going to be strikingly different, because it's also going to make it so that if you cannot enter that mindset, what happens? You have a lot of people who get addicted to pre-workouts, caffeine, before they train because they need that kick to get into the mindset they imposed on themselves to make that workout function and then perform. If you do what Musashi says and you treat training as part of normal life with your spirit unchanging, then you will be able to continue and have a more consistent way of acing your workouts. He also says, and that is not really in topic, but it's an important notion. It is difficult to know yourself if you do not know others. It's interesting because it's a mentality that is usually reversed in traditional philosophy, where people will tell you, you have to know yourself before you know others. You have to love yourself before you love others. Musashi sort of twists that mentality around. He says the exact opposite. And both are true in a sense. The ability to put yourself in the shoes of someone else are going to teach you a lot about who you are as a person. He continues, to always, there are sidetracks. If you study away daily and your spirit diverges, you may think you are obeying a good way, but objectively it is not the true way. If you are following the true way and diverge a little, this will later become a large divergence. That's very easy to understand if you picture that in your mind. If you want to go on a straight path, if you start slowly going towards the right, at first it's not going to seem like much of a difference. But at the end of the road, you really are shooting completely to the right. You're not on the true path anymore. And it's also a vicious illusion, because as you go to the right, because at the start it's so slight, you're going to get used to going right. So it's going to feel like you're going straight. Applied to lifting and training, what does that mean? It means that it's very easy to lose your way. It's very easy to lose sight of where you want to go, either because you have outside influences or because you just are not focused. And for bodybuilding, it will mean, for example, losing sight of what the weights should be doing to your body. It happens to me all the time. Well, I'll catch myself being excited by the strength and not realizing that what I'm doing is not helping my hypertrophy. And I always have to correct myself. And when I correct myself, I go back to the true path. The true path is going to depend on what you like. For example, if you're a swimmer, if you're a competitive swimmer, you should be lifting weights on the side. You should be doing strength training. If you fall in love with the strength training and you start pushing it for what it is, strength training, and you lose sight of what it should be for, which is making you a better swimmer, you are losing your true way. Now, is that always a bad thing? No. Maybe leaving the true way is going to guide you on the path that makes you happier. For me, I trained basketball, I trained football, and I constantly had to remind myself that I was doing that for sports. I had to be specific, I had to do this, do that, but I always felt that I liked the training more than I liked the sports. Eventually I ended up enjoying the weightlifting more than the matches were. It should have been the opposite. Most people who played in my team hated the training, but they loved the matches. I was the opposite. The matches were fun, but what I really wanted was to go back to the weight room. And that's when I realized what my true path was. And now it's much easier for me to stay on it. And I think once you find your true path, you're not going to diverge as much. And if you do, it's going to be very easy to correct yourself. And this is why I believe that novices, people who are new to lifting, should focus really hard on finding that path, following that path. And it's the reason why I don't like programs that push lifters into a certain category. I think too many programs are powerlifting centric, and they sort of shove novices into the powerlifting mode, where those guys might not even care about that, but they end up the training with the knowledge and the skill set that is going to be very suitable for powerlifting, so they just fall into that and they do that. You need to open yourself and you need to pay attention to where you want to go. Because if you don't, you're going to end up in a place that you might not feel comfortable in, and you might feel regret for wasting so much time. And he also says, if you study away daily and your spirit diverges, you may think you are obeying a good way. That is, for me, within the sentence, something that goes even deeper than just the knowledge of living the true way. You might think you're on the true way. It's sort of the flip side of what I just said. You might convince yourself also that you're on the true way. It's the sunken coast fallacy. Human beings have a tendency to invest a lot of time in certain aspects of their life, and sadly, the more time and money and resources you invest in something, the more you're trying to convince yourself that it's the right path, it's the true path. Why? Because you don't want to lose all of the costs that you invested in that, so it's much better to just cope and delude yourself into thinking it's the good path. But if you can become honest with yourself, you will realize that it is not what it seems like. And it's always better to cut your loss early on. Of course, it would be even better to just start on the true path very early on in life. Some people are lucky enough to find their true calling early on, but that's very rare. So even if you find what you want to do in terms of lifting, in your 20s, it's not too late. You can still do it. He continues, when you sacrifice your life, you must make fullest use of your weaponry. It is false not to do so, and to die with a weapon yet undrawn. Okay, you might be thinking, okay, you just said that lifting is not comparable to a battlefield, and now you're using a warrior metaphor. Yeah, because that's what the book is. It's a man who slashed other men, telling you how he built up his mind to do something so drastic and how he worked his body to be able to keep living, basically. What he says here can also be applied to lifting. What he means here is, and that's a very important message, when you sacrifice your life, first off, samurais, by becoming samurai, sacrifice their life. It's something that sort of don't exist anymore in the modern world. You could argue that soldiers are the last of that breed of people, but once you became samurai, you forfeited your life. Your life was owned by the Lord, and your honor was more important than your life. Those are notions that are very interesting and part of Bushido that you can research if you're interested. I will discuss them here, but I'm not going to really give you the keys of comprehension for them. Once you have that mindset of thinking, okay, this is what I want to do, you need to make fullest use of your weaponry. As a soldier, what does that mean? You're going to keep fighting until you die. You're not going to give up with a sword that's still unsheathed, it's still unused, because it would just be completely stupid in a way. If you've already given up on your life, then fight to the fullest. This is a mindset that is not popular anymore because it's became cool to just not try. We have a culture of people who don't like to try. Tryouts are seen as lame. You have people who complain about their lives every day, who sort of relish the idea